you are talking about targeted VAT exemptions, time of use of electricity tariffs. You are talking about export value rebate for exporters. You're going to get state institutions to prioritize local goods, pop-up stores and regular trade expos, fast-track utilities and regulatory clearances. You are also looking at what you call the agroecological parks along the Volta Basin. You just mentioned part of that. Urban farming clusters, Volta Lake irrigation, you spent some time on that. Volta Lake transport system, you just spent some time on that. You have nationwide industrial parks, 50 plus acres per park, dedicated power grid, embedded policies and fire service, located near agro ecological zones, etc., and 4 billion. Once again, I go to the figure because we always ask where are you going to get the money from? When Akufo-Addo, as candidate before he became president, started with Stephen Saka on Hard Talk and spoke about free SHS, the first question was, how are you going to pay for it? He fumbled, came to Ghana. You guys put a few things together before we said, Jack, it was a free SHS. Imani told you, you are not doing it the way it should be done. You won't listen. Then later, eventually, little by little, this is where we are. So, I hear from Prof, before I get to my other guest. Yes, Prof, what do you make of this 24-hour economy?
Morning to our cherished listeners. So finally, the document is here. Let me say, some of us got it ahead, way back and all of that. So I will situate my position this way because I've looked at the document from the beginning to the end. I've also looked at it in relation to Ghana Beyond Aid. I've looked at it in relation to the coordinated program of social and economic policy from 2017. It was actually supposed to have ended in 2024, but because of COVID, we extended it to 2025 and all of that. And more importantly, I've looked at this document in relation to the IMF-supported program. And the reason I did all of this is to understand why there is lack of policy continuity with our own programs. Meanwhile, IMF will give us a program. Start with one administration. Another administration comes, they continue. Incentives, all of that play a role. So I'll look at it this way. From conceptualization, diagnosis, there isn't much difference in this document and Ghana Beyond Aid. And then the coordinated program of social and economic development, all of that, there isn't much difference. When I say there isn't much difference, it's not like work hasn't gone into this. It's the issues which have been diagnosed. Under the NPP, they said they were going to change the Gorgisbeck economy. What was the Gorgisbeck economy? It was essentially moving the economy for being dependent on primary commodities to more value added and the rest of them. And in fact, and if you read the document and you read the Ghana Beyond Aid and all the others, you can see that we all have that broader consensus that we need to do something about.
For example, we have always known we need some agricultural revolution.
Precisely.
So nothing new, really.
Yes, from social studies.
Yeah.
Social
studies. Way back.
Yeah. Way back.
JHS.
You see why some lecturers don't revise their notes. Please forgive me. If the things we told them to do in the 70s, they haven't done it. Maybe we should repeat it in 2024 or something.
Social studies, when you are asked why Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's state-owned enterprises collapsed, the same issues that made it collapse, they are the same issues that confront us today.
Right.
So nothing is changing.
Right.
So something from that perspective, the diagnosis is right, and I think a lot of work has gone into that in terms of changing the structure of the economy. I mean, in the 60s, almost 80% of our export earnings driven by primary commodities. When we say we have done well as a country, it's more of the same. We have added oil and gas, but it's still primary commodities and all of that. So all successful governments have made the attempt to do something about this and all of that. So from that perspective, I would say fine. In fact, something, if you take time to read the Ghana Beyond Aid and you read this, you will see great similarity.
And 1D1F.
You will see great similarity. Look, they call it now, with Christian it, Go 24. Grow 24. In fact, under the Ghana Beyond Aid, they call it Wiser Ghana. 5 pillars: wealthy Ghana, inclusive Ghana, sustainable Ghana, empowered Ghana, resilient Ghana, and all of that. When you look at the framework from that perspective, then there are the strategies to deliver this. Call them economic development instrument. Then they talked about 1D, 1F. So it's not just in isolation. In fact, there's a whole linkages identified in there. And we have looked at the government economic development instrument, not just 1D, 1F. The economic development instrument the NPP government implemented from 2017 to 2024. If you look at this, straddled across fiscal, monetary, and specific interventions, which include 1D, 1F, planting for food and jobs, and the linkages and all of that. In fact, why it didn't work, we can understand that. But of course, let me say this. Some progress was made under these interventions. And where I think that this document should make reference and demonstrate how we are building on some of these things. It helps in taking the politics out of it, rather than developing this as though it's just
a new document.
A new document and all of that. We need to demonstrate succession. We need to demonstrate progressivity,
sustainability,
and continuity. And why this is important is that, given that it doesn't lie entirely within the government to implement this.
That's right.
Because the financing is not going to come from you. You want to develop it in such a way that there's some kind of continuity. So, for instance, some businesses benefited under the 1D, 1F. How do they feed into this? And all of that. So those are the things that I think we need to look at. So it's a great document. A lot of thought has gone into it, but there's a lot more we have to do. Something, if you read the NDC's manifesto, the Ghana Beyond Aid is packaged as the overriding, more like the overriding framework.
The MPP manifesto.
No, I'm
saying
sorry,
the concept.
The concept.
That's right.
So everything else draws from that. Everything else draws from that. So, but if you read the document, it's much more narrow. In fact, and here I will link that to Ghana Beyond Aid. Ghana Beyond Aid, they had determined that by a certain date, our GDP per capita will grow up to a certain point. They had even determined that in order to reach that point, we needed to grow our economy on the average by 9.5% and all of that. You see, consistently, because you see, you need to have that. Then the next important question you do is, what do we need to put in place to grow at this level? I know that this whole thing is about job bridge. I've seen targeting there about 1.7 million jobs and all of that and all of this. But this is how I think we can go about it. But something, let's look at it this way. So strategy, the pathways to implement this, or the economic development instrument, I agree. The difference also here is that there's a bit more focus on big-scale intervention in terms of using the voter lake. And I think a lot of work has been done in the time past about the economic potential of the voter lake. So it's good that they are making use of that, and I think that is very good. The other thing I want to talk about is implementation. Something. You know that we have successfully implemented 17 IMF-supported programs. In fact, on the IMF website, they tell us that we have been there 18 times, and we are saying 17. We will not go into why 18 and all of that. In all of this, something, we have never created a secretariat for IMF-supported program in this country. You know why that is important? And if you look at the implementation strategy here, I have serious reservations. We don't need to create an authority for Ghana Beyond, for 24-hour economy. Look, something. Since 1992, if you look at development policies and how we seek to implement it, we take it away from the existing structures within which the development channels must flow. And that is where the politics become typified.
Special assistance.
Okay. Pick National Health Insurance Authority, right? Something. from the time it was set up to date, approximately 44% of the total allocation to them is spent on administration. How do you pay claims promptly? Look at cocoa board. It's possible that cocoa board has more V8 than cocoa beans. Okay, and the rest of them. So the administrative cost of implementing some of these things becomes huge. We don't need to even create a separate unit within Ghana Police Service for 24 hours. It's supposed to be a mindset. This is government program. Everybody works with it. Okay, so look at IMF supported program. We don't have a secretariat here to implement it. IMF has an office, it's not an implementing office. And yet, we start the program, I hope you understand, a different regime comes because they are using the systems. So if I read a document and say that there will be a secretary that will collect data, this, what is Ghana Statistical Service doing? Okay, so how do we infuse this within we have a decentralized local government system, development pathways, and all that. Let's do that. That way, we will minimize the cost of implementing this intervention. So I said that you see there's been a lot of about whether the policy eventually is here. There are a lot of thinking has gone into it, but I'm saying that we can make it work better. And all that way, once we infuse it within the existing systems, ministries, departments, agencies, they are all running with it. Even if there's a change in government, it will not necessarily dislocate the pathway and the rest. Otherwise, you create, for instance, the same thing we did for 1D, 1F, and the rest of them. So once there's a change in government, what happens? All those people will go. We created Southern Development Authority. We created this authority, created this. All of that, they are cost centers, budgetary allocations. What is the value? The taxpayer is burdened and all of that. So let's look at it. Then the other thing I want to talk about is this. If I pick this document, what are the key performance indicators? How is that linked to the critical success factors within all of this? In fact, something 6 months from now, if we want to know the progress government is making on this, how are we going to tell? And that is why IMF programs work effectively. And I would advise, that's why in looking at this document, I looked at it side by side, other document that we have had, and I also looked at it side by side with the IMF supported program. Look, there's a phasing, a regular review. And that is why it compels government to work with it. Because July 7th or so, the IMF Executive Board will meet on our program. That's a review. When they are done, they will give us their review. Everybody will read it. Stakeholders. So this one, what is the phasing? And once you do the phasing, it will compel you to develop projections.
Right.
So I see that maybe 2028, they are talking about target, but 6 months from now, how do we break them down into objective targets and the KPIs and the data we need to generate?
What's your verdict or hope in the promise of this document, this policy?
Look, there's potential in this document. Just as you see, look, Ghana's development is in our literature. The document, when you read it, you will smile for Ghana.
Just as the laws that we pass.
We can write.
Okay, but the issue is how do we move this from good intentions into implementation and the rest of them? And here I'll say the costing hasn't been done properly. In fact, you need more than $4 billion unless the $4 billion is the administrative cost and the rest of them, because one channel which they want to bring this 24-hour economy into fruition is the big push. The big push itself in their manifesto, they've indicated they need $10 billion.
That's correct.
To bring it. So that's just one part. Because without infrastructure, and I like the diagnosis, the work that the team has done in terms of the contribution of logistics to prices. Okay, we are doing close to 35, 40%.
60%.
Yes, and the rest of them. So
if a company, a private entity is going to employ 3 people for one job or 2 people for one particular role in a company, does it take this incentive, giving them lower electricity tariffs?
They will wait. You look at it and say it's cost benefit. To have somebody on your payroll, there has to be a reason beyond just incentives.
That reason is?
Okay, so the reason is, you see,
market-driven.
Yes, market-driven. And there's a dominant school of thought that says that you need to create a certain enabling environment, broad-based. Okay, that is more effective than maybe creating a delimited this thing and say incentive and all of that, because the frictions in the economy would outweigh whatever incentive they want to get from.
I had a police senior police officer talk about is it a 24-hour something secretariat at the police headquarters?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned earlier, that we don't need to go that
24-hour security. I was like, what's he talking about?
And
has security ever been less than 24 hours? So what is the point?
And why should that be done for those who work the last shift? Those who work the first shift, they need protection to sleep soundly, as much as those who go the last shift and all of that. So that's what I'm saying. When we go this way, then anytime there's a change in government, we have to disband and all of that. That's how we make the politics look so distant.
Somebody said they went to the DVLA, which has created a 24-hour service. And they went there, they were told that they couldn't process something because of either internet or something of the sort in the night.
So, so that's what I'm saying. So I believe that the government is going to do that. And that is why in terms of the pathways, road, infrastructure, logistics, they've talked about all of them. Of course, the integrated and the leakages looks very beautiful, okay, on the document and all of that. But implementation, the question is, 4 billion, certainly not adequate. Where is it going to come from? And something more recently, when COVID came, we had Ghana Care, Obatampa, PCPEC, and the rest of them. They said 100 billion. And then they said the 100 billion, 70% was going to come for private sector. Look, before private sector will put their money there and all of that. So that's what I'm saying, that to the extent that its implementation does not depend totally on government, then we want to be able to, I believe that is a good starting point. We need to, we'll freshen it up and all of that and see how.
So we'll get to him to explain later